For the coming two lesson, we are not going to do the test, but we're going to do the experiment. So Mr. Choi will help me to demonstrate the experiment to you. And in this experiment, we're actually studying the properties of sodium and potassium, mainly group 1 metal. And also at the same time, we are going to study how group 1 metal, which means sodium and potassium, are reacting with water. So in this video, I will introduce the process of the whole experiment to you, and also I may highlight the points that you need to pay attention to when you're observing the experiment. And before I start to introduce the experiment to you, I would like to ask you a question first. So the question is like this. Among group 1, group 2, and group 3, which means among the metal, the group of metal. So which group of metals will react more vigorously with water? So I may give you like 5 seconds to think about it. Another saying, which means among group 1, group 2, and group 3, which group is more reactive? Okay, so the answer is actually group 1 metal, which means potassium, sodium, and lithium, something like this. And they react more vigorously with water when comparing to another group of metals. So here is the reason why. And the reason are actually written on chapter 10 notes. So you may go back to the notes and have a look of it. And for the reason here, why group 1 metal is more reactive than group 2 and group 3 metals. For the reason, you need to know why. So you need to remember that. And also, the main point is you need to know that group 1 metal is more reactive than group 2 and group 3. Okay, so since group 1 metal react very vigorously with water, or when it undergo reactions, most likely they react vigorously, and therefore this experiment is quite dangerous, and I'm not going to ask you to do alone, but I will ask Mr. Choi to do the demonstration to you. But before that, I'm going to draw the experimental setup with you together. So these are the apparatus and also the chemicals that we may use. And in this experiment, I guess we will not use lithium. Okay, so first of all, this is a reaction between group 1 metal and water. So first of all, we will have a water trough. 咁你當我哋有個水兜啦 and it is halfly filled with water. And also in the water, we may add few drops of universal indicator to it. And also you can think about it. What is the usage of universal indicator? And I will tell you later. Okay, so after you prepare the water trough, the second step is to add the sodium or the potassium into the water. So here we have the sodium or the potassium. And we are actually adding the sodium and potassium into the water by using a forceps. forceps 即係個夾，係啦，即係一個鉗啦，你當。咁我哋會鉗嗰個嘅 sodium 同埋 potassium 入去啦。咁 sodium 同埋 potassium 咧，我哋嗰個實驗都會做一次俾你睇嘅。And as I said before, for this reaction, it is quite dangerous, and therefore we need to add a safety squeeze to separate you and also to separate you and Mr. Choi to make sure that you are safe. So here we will add a safety screen. So the safety screen is adding here. 咁個 safety screen 就係用嚟隔住你同蔡生啦，咁啊等你係安全嘅啫，咁嗰啲水就唔會彈落你度啦，或者係啦，避免一啲危險發生。So this is the experimental setup show you how sodium or potassium react with water in laboratory. So this is one of the experiment that we're going to do in the 2 lessons. And the second experiment is here. We're going to use a knife to see whether you can cut the sodium or potassium into pieces or not. So Mr. Choi will ask some of you to do it. So if you can cut the metal into pieces, then you can just mark down your observation in the table on the next page. And if you can't, then you can just also write down your answer. So for the second experiment, it is related to the cutting metals. And also, in this experiment, besides doing the demonstration, I would like you to pay attention to the storage of potassium and sodium. And since potassium and sodium is very reactive metal, we're not just simply storing sodium and potassium in a glass bottle, but we have some special way to store the two metals here. So you may ask Mr. Choi to show you the answer to see how we can store potassium and sodium in the school laboratory. Okay, so let's go to the next page. And here is the table that you need to complete after doing the 2 experiments. So the first question would be like, how can you cut the metal? Can the metal be cut or not? So the answer is just yes and no. And also, after cutting the metal, how is the metal looks like? It looks like shiny or it looks dull. And also, we will place the metal in air for a while, and you can also have a observation later to see whether the surface is dull or shiny. And also, after adding the sodium or potassium in water, you can have a look of it to see whether the metal is floating on the water surface or it sinks to the bottom of the water. And also, after adding the metal into water, what is the observation? So here are some questions, some guiding questions to you. First of all, the metal is sink or float on water. And also, when we put the metal into water, does the metal burns? If yes, what is the flame color? So if the metal is putting on the water surface, it stays still on the water surface or it will move. And if it have movement, then how the metal move on the water surface or at the bottom of the water? And also during the whole experiment, can you hear some sound when we're doing the experiment? If yes, then try to describe the sound in words. Okay? Okay, so before we talk about the conclusion, think about it. We go back to the experimental setup here first. So for the water trough, besides adding water, we are actually adding the universal indicator. So what is the usage of the universal indicator? The usage is like this. So we are actually using the universal indicator to show you the nature of the solution. So what means by the nature of the solutions, which means it will show you whether the solution is a acidic solution, a neutral solution, or a alkaline solution. And basically we have 3 color. So if the color of the universal indicator is green, which means the solution is neutral. For example, like water is neutral. And if it is acidic, then basically the color will be red. And if it is alkali, then the solution will turn blue. So here I would like you to observe, before we put the metals into the water, what is the original color of the solution? And after the whole experiment, what is the color of the result alkane solution. Okay, so this is how you're going to mark down the result. So this table, you need to fill in all the boxes here. And also after doing the whole experiment, you know how to do the conclusion. So how to finish the fill in the blanks here. And this is the main point of the whole experiment.